You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and... she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Lone Conservative. Now, guys, you have no idea. You have no idea how good it feels to finally be back in your loving embrace. I missed you all. I missed you all so much, you know. It wasn't. I'm so emotional. No, but in all seriousness, I am sorry for being away for 2 weeks. Before we get into today's episode, I feel that y'all deserve some form of explanation, because for the 90 of you, I know, it used to be 5, and now it's an average of around 90. For the 90 of you that tune into the episode to the show just about every week, y'all deserve an explanation. The reason why I couldn't really afford to record for the past 2 weeks was I have a lot of internship opportunities that I've been juggling. I had a ton of interviews, I had a ton of things to prep for, and I finally got a job, which is one of the reasons why now I'm finally back, is I'm not being swamped by interviews every single day. But the place I'm working at is called the Media Research Center in Washington, D.C. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to love it. I'm so excited. And I really wanted a good internship for the summer. It would have been my really first serious political job, and I wanted to make it work. Beyond that, I've been starting up my own YAF chapter on campus, Young Americans for Freedom. For those of you who don't know, it's a college organization, conservative college organization, and it's been difficult. There's been a lot of people in the administration at UNCW who have been very helpful, but then there were some people who were unhelpful, and there was some nitpicking going on, I feel, with the Constitution. And either way, I had to focus on that to really get it done by the end of the semester. If we didn't get it done by the end of the semester, it would have been detrimental to our membership for next year. And then the final thing is just finals. I had final after final after final. I actually had a final that I'm just coming back from as I record this, but now they're more spread out. I had exams before the finals. I had a lot to study for. So it was, this last 2 weeks was really jam-packed. And I'm not going to name any names, but I did try to make, and this is still my fault, I still would have been out for a week, but I was going to try and make 2 episodes for when I was away to spread them out and make it so that it wouldn't be that I'm missing a whole week, but instead I would have just released an episode on Monday, and I would have had one episode a week. So I tried to have 2 episodes for when I was away, and the people that I intended to record those episodes with, it just didn't work out. I understand. People get busy and people have things in their lives other than this podcast, which, how dare they? How dare they have anything in their lives other than this podcast? But I understand it. So, either way, I'm glad to be back. We're back on a normal schedule. We'll be having on some people this Friday. Well, I think Brady Leonard's going to be coming on the show this Friday. So, I'm back to having guests. You're back to hearing my sexy voice. And let's just get started with this today. Today's topics aren't going to be particularly happy. I am going to try something new at the end of the... By the way, I'm going to start trying to do the Daily Dose of Cringe, or the Taking a Stroll Down to Cringe Corner, that's the name of this segment, more consistently, because there's just so much cringe to be exploited in modern-day politics. I feel like, why shouldn't we? But I'm also going to be, at the end of the episode, I'll be reviewing the newest episode of Game of Thrones that came out yesterday, because my friends encouraged me to, so I'll give a spoiler warning, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really into spoiler warnings, but I was advised to give one, so I will. So until we get to that point, let us just jump right into things. So, Israel over the weekend was attacked. Hamas launched a series of rocket attacks over the weekend, which led to the deaths of 4 Israeli civilians, and Israel retaliated, and it ended in the deaths of 23 Palestinians. These retaliations never are isolated, sadly, to Hamas militants as much as we'd like them to be. A number of civilians, including 2 pregnant women, died in the Israeli retaliation. All 4 Israelis who died were civs. The conflict was apparently partially sparked by Israel opening fire on protesters on Friday along the Gazan border. There's a lot of people saying right now that the protesters along the Gazan border, the Palestinian protesters that the Israelis opened fire on, were unarmed. And they were just innocents, and they were expressing themselves, and blah, 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 blah. And the real fact of the situation is, from what I've seen, and I could be wrong here, and I accept with these situations, everything's complex, and I could be wrong about things, but from what I've seen, these quote-unquote protesters that people are citing, these freedom lovers, these people who just want Israel to stop occupying their home, these people were throwing bombs. There were people on the Gazan side who were throwing homemade bombs at the Israeli side of the conflict. So it's not like these protesters were protesting, but there are people in the mainstream media, and there are people who will defend Palestine at any cost, who are out there trying to say, well, before this even happened, Israel opened fire on unarmed protesters. This is just another display in the Israeli genocide. It's ridiculous. And I'm sorry to make these stupid voices and to mock people. I usually am not about that. But Nikki Haley, who just followed me on Twitter, guys, and Nikki Haley posed a really good point. If this were happening over an American city, if we constantly, let's say, I don't know, Canada, let's be fair, you could never imagine Canada being an extremist place, all right? Canada, they're so nice. But imagine Canada for a second is run by a terror cell. And imagine that terror cell, literally in its charter, for people who say that Hamas isn't a terrorist organization and is just an organization of Palestinians who want peace, this isn't even a straw man, people. There are actual human beings who argue that Hamas is not a terror group, and they're serious about it. But let's say that in Canada's charter, it says that they want the express destruction of the United States, of Americans, and that they want to wage a holy jihad on us to destroy us. Let's say that's in their charter, as it is in Hamas's charter for Israel. And they constantly lobby rocket strikes at us. And every time we retaliate, every single time, America would retaliate for those rocket strikes. I mean, assuming we didn't just turn the place that launched those rockets into a pile of rubble. The international community came down on us and said, how could you? How could you kill civilians? We condemn your actions. We condemn this retaliation. How could you launch rocket strikes into Canada? How do you think Americans would react? Sincerely. Do you think they'd tell the international community to go F themselves? I think they would. I think even a lot of people on the American left would. Because when it comes down to it, when it's your family that constantly has to face rocket strikes, the threat of rocket strikes, when it's your family who's expected to be rational in the face of a terror organization that literally its express purpose is to bring about your destruction, I don't think you're going to give a crap what the international community says. I don't think you're going to give a crap what a few Americans who want to grandstand say. I don't think you're going to give a crap what a few Americans who sympathize with anti-Semitic and extreme elements like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib say. Because let's hear what Ilhan Omar had to say about these rocket attacks, about Israel getting attacked, and about their retaliation. Ilhan Omar tweeted, quote, "How many more protesters must be shot? Rockets must be fired, and little kids must be killed until the endless cycle of violence ends. The status quo of occupation and humanitarian crisis in Gaza is unsustainable. Only real justice can bring about security and lasting peace." We all know Ilhan Omar isn't talking about justice for Israel. We all know she isn't. It's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The only people causing that are Hamas. Israel unilaterally stopped occupying Gaza in 2005. Every single major step in Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations, every single major step in concessions has been made by Israel. The people who, if I'm remembering correctly, have offered some sort of unification deal to the Palestinians 4 times over. Israel is the reasonable party in this situation. Any reasonable party, when they are attacked, when rockets are launched into suburban neighborhoods, are going to retaliate. I don't know what these people want. I don't know what anyone wants. It seems as if, and I'm sorry to use the left as this broad term, but it's just necessary here, because there are so many people on the left, even if they're not anti-Semitic themselves, who can't seem to sympathize with the Israeli cause. Who can't seem to sympathize with what Israelis have to go through. Because with all the left's talk about emotional intelligence, about feelings, about caring, about putting yourself in other people's shoes, they lack empathy. They have a surprisingly low amount of empathy. And it's really just disgusting. Rashida Tlaib also said on Twitter, so moving on from Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib said on Twitter, quote, "When will the world stop dehumanizing our Palestinian people who just want to be free? Headlines like this and framing it in this way just feeds into the continued lack of responsibility on Israel, who unjustly oppress and target Palestinian children and families." Gaza militant, this was in response to a New York Times headline, for once an unbiased headline from the New York Times, that simply said, "Gaza militants fire 250 rockets, and Israel responds with airstrikes." That is a statement of fact! There's not... what is skewed about that? It's a statement of fact! Gaza... Are you saying that Gaza did not launch rockets? And that Israel did not launch airstrikes in return? What are you trying to say, Rashida Tlaib? I wish you could hear me. I would love to... You know what, if someone out there is connected and could get Rashida Tlaib on this show, please do. Please do. I would love to ask this woman what the hell she's thinking when she tweets things like this. Israel is the one targeting Palestinian children and families? Are you sincerely ignoring the fact that Hamas, it's literally one of their tactics. I'm sorry, it's been one of their tactics since their inception. That when being retaliated against by Israel, they will use families as human shields. They've literally put munitions in and under schools. They've stationed fighters in hospitals. Israel, if you don't know this, it's actually quite interesting. Israel tries as much as possible to not bomb civilians. Frequently, before Israel launches some sort of retaliatory strike, they will drop, because Hamas occupies themselves in civilian areas, they will literally drop pamphlets before striking the area, saying, "Get out now, we are about to strike the area." They drop these pamphlets for civilians, and Hamas doesn't let these civilians leave. Because, if I'm going to die, then these civilians might as well die with me, so we can make Israel look bad. I've said this before, but there is a rational and an irrational party in these conflicts. Israel is the rational party. Palestine is the irrational party. And I say Palestine as a whole place. Both Hamas and the PLA, or the Palestinian Authority, are irrational. Hamas more so than the PLA. I'll give the PLA that. But the PLA is still extremely anti-Semitic. The PLA still hates Israel. All right, according to the Gatestone Institute, I'm going to read their article on this here. Quote, since the Palestinian Authority was established and continuing throughout 2015, it has systematically used anti-Semitism to indoctrinate young and old to hate Israelis and Jews. The PA has actively promoted religious hatred by demonizing Judaism and Jews, spreading libels that present Jews as endangering Palestinians, Arabs, and all humanity. The PA presents Jews as possessing inherently evil traits. Jews are said to be treacherous, corrupt, allied with the devil, as well as descendants of apes and pigs. That's the Palestinian Authority. That is the side of this conflict. I mean, when they're not defending Hamas, when the left isn't defending Hamas, because they do that now, when they're not defending Hamas, they're saying, well, what about the PA, the Palestinian Authority, man? They're moderates. They're like their own government, man. They're not moderates. They would just as soon see Israel destroyed as Hamas. The only difference is they're not as willing to launch missiles at them. Because I think they value their lives a little more highly than Hamas does. Everything Hamas does in the Gaza Strip, which Israel again has not occupied since 2005, is to get international attention and international sympathy. There is a reason why they hide their munitions in schools, in hospitals. There's a reason why they station fighters in high civilian concentrated areas. It is because they know that if they're going to take the loss of their munitions, or they're going to take the loss of their men, they might as well demonize Israel in the process. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's abhorrent that we constantly put the blame on the Israelis when they defend themselves. What do you expect them to do? I genuinely ask this. What do you expect them to do? Let's say for a second, and this is a hypothetical, right, to the people on the left, but let's say for a second that Israel is the good guy in this situation. Okay, I know that's hard to believe, but let's say that Israel's the good guy. Let's say that Israel's the good guy, and that the retaliation, that they need to do something. They've just been hit by the bad guy. Suburban areas have just been hit. Missile strikes have just been launched. Missiles have broken through the Iron Dome defense system and have destroyed families. Israeli citizens cower in fear. Israeli men, brave men and women, use their bodies to shield children. There was actually a case of this. It was very heartwarming. There was an Israeli man who shielded the body of a young girl, or used his body to shield a young girl. Luckily, both of them are still alive. But as the sirens went off that missiles were incoming, this is what he did. All right? That happens. What do you do? What do you do? Your enemies are hiding amongst civilians. You can't go in there full guns blazing with your ground forces, because then the international community accuses you of occupation, and then you really are in trouble. Because it's different when you use ground forces. When you use ground forces, it becomes more so an official war. And I think Israel, justifiably, isn't too willing to take the international backlash that would come with actually going in there with ground forces, wiping out Hamas, and occupying the place. Though, honestly, at this point, I think Israel has every right to occupy Gaza. I think Israel has obviously, you have to treat the civilians with respect. You have to uphold their human rights. And no one's saying that they shouldn't do that. All right, before someone tries to accuse me of saying Israel can just go in there and start shooting every Palestinian, what I am saying is that Israel, I think, has every right to go into Gaza and occupy it and wipe out Hamas. Like, just decimate the people who literally, again, in their charter it says they want to annihilate the state of Israel. All right, but your enemies are hiding amongst a civilian population. You can't go in there guns blazing. You can't go in there with your ground forces. What do you do? What do you do? Because also, by the way, even when you're precise, even when there's quote-unquote protesters along your Gazan-Israeli border, and then they start throwing homemade bombs at you, and you shoot the protesters who are throwing homemade bombs at you, you still get criticized. So you get criticized even when you defend yourself on a singular level. But what do you do? The only thing left to do is to launch missiles, since you can't go in there yourself and do anything about it. So it's either launch missiles or do nothing. How do you think Hamas is going to respond if they learn that Israel will do nothing and does nothing? whenever they attack them. It ain't going to be good. That's the long and short of it. It ain't going to be good. They're going to see Israel is weak. They're going to take advantage of them. They're going to launch 10 times as many missile strikes. Instead of 4, you have 40 dead. Instead of 40, you have 80 dead. And it'll just grow and grow and grow. Israel literally needs to retaliate for the lives of its citizens. There is no just standing idly by. And the thing is, people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and anti-Semites within the Democratic Party, not only do they criticize Israel for retaliating, but okay, let's say we tell Israel, listen, you can't retaliate to missile strikes anymore, which is an absolute violation of their national sovereignty, and it would be extremely disgusting. But let's say we go to Israel and we say, listen, you can't retaliate anymore, but what we are going to do, since you can't retaliate anymore, the only fair trade-off here, if there is any fair trade-off, would be let's increase their Iron Dome defenses. Let's increase their defense capabilities. Let's funnel some more U.S. funding into their defense capabilities so they can more accurately shoot down the missiles before they get there. Guess what Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, the anti-Semites, and the Democratic Party want to do? They want to cut funding to Israel! Some of them just want to cut all funding outright. Many of them, all funding. Many of them just want to cut funding in terms of funneling less money into Israel for their Iron Dome system. There's actually been moves in the Democratic Party before in votes, I believe, in the Senate and the House, I think mainly the Senate, to actually stop, or not just stop, but to cut funding to the Israeli, specifically the Israeli Iron Dome defense system, which makes sure that it's only 4 missiles breaking through and not 40. All right? It's ridiculous. Not only do the Democrats, not only does the left and the anti-Semites on the left, not only do they want Israel to not defend itself, they also want to cut funding for the system and for the apparatus that keeps Israelis from dying. So you don't want them to fight back, and you just want them to sit there and die without proper defense systems. That's ridiculous, and that's disgusting. I'm sorry I'm laughing. It's not a laughing matter. It's just really, it's gross. It's gross that you would try to cut these people's funding for their defenses and at the same time tell them, well, you can't even fight back. It's gross. I can't believe there are people whose psychology that I can't understand. All right, now I understand when I say that the anti-Semites in the Democratic Party, I understand. I come at this from a different position than many people on the right. For the third time, I understand that not everyone who is against Zionism, not everyone who is very harshly critical toward the state of Israel is anti-Semitic. I don't think that. There's a lot of people on the right who try to say that if you aren't a Zionist or if you're anti-Zionism, then you must be an anti-Semite. I don't believe that. I think it's a stupid, stupid position, but I've personally known anti-Zionists who aren't anti-Semites. I really don't think that's the case at all. I think a lot of the people who are anti-Zionist and anti-Israel and for this divest Israel standard and for decreasing the funding the United States puts into Israel are being manipulated. I don't think they themselves are anti-Semitic. I think they are being manipulated by the anti-Semites. I think they are being manipulated by the people like Ilhan Omar, by the people like Rashida Tlaib, by certain elements within the Democratic Party who claim that, listen, disliking it, who themselves are anti-Semites, but claim that, listen, disliking Israel and disliking Zionism and disliking the idea of Israel defending itself isn't an anti-Semitic idea. It's a humanitarian idea. I think the people who are staunchly anti-Zionist and who are staunchly anti-Israel are being manipulated by those people. I don't think most of them are anti-Semites. Though I will say that they are embracing anti-Semitic, I think, ideas in this quest for compassion, in this quest for caring and empathy, when in reality their empathy, as I said before, is lacking. And before we move on, because this just popped up on my Twitter feed, I do keep an eye on Twitter and the news as I do the podcast, just in case there's some big current news event that pops up that I need to know about. But Tommy Corbin tweeted out, quote, 14-month-old Sabah Abu Arar and her pregnant mother were murdered last night by an Israeli airstrike on Gaza. The world needs to see this image. The world needs to get angry about this image. The world needs to wake up and stand in solidarity with Palestine. RIP. hashtag Free Palestine. The only issue with this that I'm seeing is because I said that there were pregnant women who died in the Israeli rocket launch, or rocket retaliation. Now, I don't know if this is one of these pregnant women, or they're trying to claim that this is a third pregnant woman that died. Either way, I'm going through my feed right now, and everyone on the left is trying to claim that Israel killed this pregnant woman and her daughter. The only issue is they didn't. This pregnant woman and her daughter were killed, in fact, by a Hamas rocket that they were attempting to launch on Israel that fell short. The left is so dang determined to literally blame Israel for everything. This is the thing. I understand that a lot of people are being fooled. I think that a lot of people are being fooled into taking on these anti-Semitic tropes and these anti-Semitic ideas under the guise of protecting a victimized class and being empathetic and sympathetic to the Palestinian people's cause. I understand that. But at the same time, I really don't understand the animosity that comes where they try to blame Israel for literally everything. Like, it's as if the left can't acknowledge that the PA and that Hamas do wrong, that they do evil things, that they say evil things, that they have evil goals in some cases. Again, that Hamas has in their charter, that they want to wipe out the state of Israel. It's as if they can't admit that they're anything but these perfect little good guys, and that everything that happens, every civilian that dies, that is on Israel's hands. Hell, Israel could have done nothing. Israel could have not retaliated with rocket attacks against Hamas. Could have had restraint, which I don't think they should have had restraint in this situation, but they could have had restraint and not launched any sort of attack, and this pregnant woman still would have died. And the left still would have tried to find some way to blame Israel. I mean, this intellectual dishonesty, it really needs to end if there is going to be any sort of progress with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Alright, so before we move on and get into the Game of Thrones episode review and taking a stroll down to Cringe Corner, I do have something that I want to cover. And I have an article coming out in Lone Conservative on it, hopefully soon. So I'm going to be quoting some information from my own article, because my memory is just terrible. But I'm going to be quoting some information from my own article on something that's been happening in China. And I really do think that people need to know about it. So there's a population of Muslims in China called the Uyghur Muslims. And the Uyghur Muslims number, in China alone, they number around 11.3 million. I think in the rest of the world, there's around 13 million, 12 to 13 million of them. But in China, there's 11.3 million Uyghur Muslims in the region called Xinjiang. And the Xinjiang region is kind of the region of China where it merges from what's traditionally known as Asia into what's traditionally known as the Middle East. There are desert regions of China. I think most people don't understand how huge China is. And for a long time now, since around 2017, the Chinese government has been cracking down on this Uyghur Muslim population. But before we get into that, and before we get into how the Chinese government exactly has been oppressing these people, I think it would be good to go over some historical context. So some historical context for the situation is the Chinese government claimed Xinjiang, the region that houses the Uyghur Muslims, in 1949. Xinjiang is resource rich. It provided a lot of opportunity to the Chinese people. So after China claimed the region, shortly after, the Han Chinese began migrating there in massive numbers. The Han Chinese, if you don't know, are the ethnic majority in China. As the Han Chinese began migrating to Xinjiang and looking for opportunities there, the Chinese government began to exert more and more authority over the region and take away more and more of its autonomy, and this often resulted in disadvantages for the Uyghur population. So because of the Chinese government's constant pressure, and because of the Chinese government's constant exertion of authority, and because beyond that, it did favor the Han Chinese and disadvantage the Uyghur Muslims, ethnic tensions began to really come to a head. And those tensions, they began to boil up. And they came to a head in 2009 when protests and riots broke out across some of Xinjiang's most populated cities. The most notable among these was the Urumqi riot, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Urumqi, a clash which saw the death of around 200 people. So after that, the Chinese government said, hey, look at these Uyghurs. They're radical, they're extreme, they have extremist elements within their population that are influencing the broader population as a whole. This is ridiculous. They basically tried to accuse the Uyghur population unjustly and untruthfully of being extremists. And this all was culminated in 2017 when they finally began to oppress the Uyghur Muslims much more harshly than they ever had. And in 2017, when they really started this apparatus of spying on Uyghur Muslims and putting Uyghurs into camps, and we'll get to that, but when they really started this whole crusade, they used the Urumqi riots and protests and these violent clashes as an excuse. And they also used the Kunming train station stabbing, which was a terrorist attack by, I believe they were Uyghur Muslims, and I hate to... I'm not excusing extremists, but every single community, and I hate to sound like Barack Obama, what about the Crusades? But every single community does have their extremist elements. All right, but China is and what China is doing here is they're not just attacking the Uyghur extremist elements. They're saying the entire Uyghur population is extreme. Extremists, they're saying this untruthfully, by the way. There's been no proof of this. They're saying the entire population is influenced by extremism. They're saying the entire population are essentially terrorists. And what they've been doing to the Uyghur Muslims has been... They've been doing it under the guise of combating Islamic extremism. So, now that we've kind of gotten the history out of the way, I think it's important to go over what exactly has been happening. And I am going to quote my own article that's coming out soon. And I hope you all go to read it because it's very informative on the overall history of the situation. But, quote, over the past 2 years, the Chinese government has introduced a surveillance apparatus in the Xinjiang region more intense than in most other regions of China. According to sources, the movements of around 2.5 million Uyghur Muslims in the region are being tracked in an effort to suppress the group. More horrifying than this is that between 1 to 2 million Uyghur Muslims have been forced into camps. The reason why there's such a disparity, by the way, between the 1 to 2 million Uyghur Muslims is that the UN has estimated that there's 1 million, and the State Department has estimated that there's around 2 million in camps. So as of right now, this is 3.5 to 4.5 million Uyghur Muslims directly being oppressed by this Chinese government. And listen, the definition of genocide is very specific. So even though technically it may not be a genocide right now, there have been Uyghur community leaders and people in the international community who have expressed, experience with genocides and how they begin, saying this could very well lead to a genocide. And the thing that's really alarming people is that, again, 1 to 2 million Uyghur Muslims are in camps. Now, the Chinese government is claiming right now that the camps that they've been forcing these Uyghur Muslims into is just a voluntary experience. The Uyghurs want to be there. They volunteered to be there. It's just to help with jobs creation and extremist combating extremism. That's not true. According to just about every single source from the Uyghur community, Uyghurs are being forced into these camps. Many are saying that they were forced to study communist propaganda, give thanks to President Xi Jinping, and undergo other forms of re-education. Now, this isn't as common. Death, I should say. Death isn't as common in the camps. It's not like Uyghurs are being shot outright every single day in these camps from what we know right now. But there have been reported cases of death in these camps from mistreatment. There have been cases shared of torture from the camps. And one of the most horrific ways that the Uyghurs have been tortured so far is that they've been strapped into this thing called the tiger chair. It's essentially a 5-foot-long board where bricks are placed under your legs, and they're stacked, and your legs are put up into an unnatural position as they kind of hover over your body. And the bricks are stacked there until the person who is in the tiger chair either reaches a mental breaking point, or quite literally people's legs have snapped because of this torture. And there's been other forms of torture, such as waterboarding, reported from within the camps as well. Beyond camps and surveillance, in terms of how the Uyghur population is being oppressed by the Chinese, they've been forced to eat pork and drink alcohol, a big no-no in Islam. They've been forced to celebrate Chinese holidays instead of their traditionally held festivals. This is the most disgusting case, one of the most disgusting cases that I've heard from coming out of China with the Uyghur population is that children have actually been forcibly, now this is disgusting, and I've actually heard people like Ben Shapiro talk about not the Uyghurs before, but how one of the worst things the government can do is take away your kids. That's what the Chinese government's been doing. Their family members are alive and well. They have a family to go to. It doesn't matter. The Chinese government is ripping children away from their families and putting them into state-run orphanages, presumably where they're going to re-educate these children to kill their culture and to not act like Uyghur Muslims, but act like good little Chinese communists. It's disgusting. What's happening here is disgusting. Millions in camps, millions under even more intense surveillance than most of China. And most of China, guys, is under pretty intense surveillance already, so you can only imagine how bad it is. It's disgusting. It's evil. It's wrong. And the reason I bring this up is because the mainstream media doesn't bring it up enough. When's the last time? And I recently looked it up on Google just to see if there were any new articles out. Because when I was writing my piece, the last article I was able to get was like from 2 weeks ago. Which is bad. Which is bad in a developing genocidal situation. The last article I could possibly find was from 2 weeks. I Googled Uyghurs. I found articles that are just as new as yesterday. So I'm glad that the media seems to be starting to pick it up more. And unless I've missed it, when have you heard about the Uyghurs on primetime television? When have you heard Anderson Cooper cover the Uyghur Muslims? When have you heard Don Lemon cover the Uyghur Muslims? The media is more concerned with turning Americans against each other than with reporting important stories of actual human rights abuses. Instead of focusing on Israel defending itself and calling that a genocide, why don't we actually focus on a developing genocide? I mean, it's really disgusting. Because bad things happen in the world all the time, and genocides are way too frequent in societies across the world. But it's not like they're the most common thing in the world, as common as mistreatment across the globe is. Sorry, excuse me. It's just despicable. It's despicable that if the media could give this 5 minutes of primetime coverage, that could honestly possibly make all the difference. I mean, people need to be knowledgeable of this. The main reason for that is we could possibly be complicit and actually help in funding this possible genocide. There are Chinese businesses on the stock market that Americans are invested in right now. They have it in their portfolios that are directly involved in oppressing the Uyghurs. Thank God the Washington Post wrote an article on it, but it's not primetime. It's not. I've never seen anything like that on primetime news or on the front page of a newspaper. I know it's not big news. I know it's not big money-making news, but I think the media has some sort of moral culpability and moral responsibility to report this stuff. To report the petty or the serious issues abroad that involve possible genocide as much as they report the petty Trump drama at home. It's really despicable how the media has been covering this. It's really, or I should say lack thereof. And I think more people need to know about it. And I'll actually put a link to the Washington Post article that shows some of the Chinese businesses that you could possibly be invested in that aid in helping oppress Uyghurs. I think, and the good thing is that the international community is doing something about this. It's finally. I mean, the international community has been condemning China. There was a congressional, I think, session on this whole thing. Now that Nikki Haley follows me on Twitter, thank God. But honestly, I would love to see Nikki Haley comment on this or see how much she knows about it. I would love to see people who are involved in international politics on the U.S.'s behalf really start to go after China more. We are the forefront of liberty in the world. We're the forefront, despite how many leftists will try and say that Europe is the cream of the crop in terms of human rights. We are the true arbiters of who is protected. We are, as much as some people hate to admit it, the world's police right now. And as the world's police, I think the least that America can do. No, I'm not saying nuke China. But I'm saying go into the UN and call them on their, excuse my language, bullshit. Call them on their bullshit. Say that these camps aren't voluntary. Say that it's not over-exaggerated to say 1 to 2 million Uyghurs are in camps. We need to do more. We need to be better. And if we're not, we are very much complicit in actual genocide. Listen, I've always held that the United States should do as much as it can to combat actual genocides that are happening. But it is different for us personally that a possible genocide is developing in China than if it's developing in Sudan. As horrible as genocides are, as morally repugnant and evil as they are, we are personally economically invested in China much more than we are in Sudan. We are. And being personally economically invested means that we do have some culpability in what happens, especially when China is using their industries to crack down on these people. So I urge you to do more research. I urge you to read more about it. It's something that I think, like I said, more people need to know about. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to it today on the podcast, because I don't want to sound like I'm grandstanding, but it is an actually extremely important issue, much more important than how many redactions are in the Mueller report. All right, so moving on from that sad topic, we can finally get into some fun stuff. Okay, so Game of Thrones, the 4th episode premiered last night. And I know some people, mostly those in Lone Conservative, wanted me to review the episode and wanted to know what I thought of it. So, spoiler warning, spoilers ahead, blah, 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 blah. I may honestly include the Season 8, Episode 3 episode in this review, too. Just because I think they're so intertwined. But spoilers, I'll give you 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. If you're not gone now, you only have yourself to blame. So the episode was classic Game of Thrones. It was an extremely amazing episode. And there are some people, like I saw some people trying to say that, I'll get into my actual review, but I saw some people trying to say that Lord Varys is like a Game of Thrones libertarian. Lord Varys is a Game of Thrones populist. His whole shtick is, I serve the people, I serve the people, I serve the realm. That's a populist standpoint. Standing on behalf of the people and nothing but the people is a populist standpoint. Lord Varys is a Game of Thrones populist. But the episode was classic Game of Thrones. Obviously, this episode is coming off of the huge battle with the Night King and the epic defeat of him by Arya Stark, which I thought was a little anticlimactic. I didn't like that Arya was the one to kill him in the way she did. I would have been fine, by the way, with her killing him in general. But there are some people trying to act like they had this planned all along, like when Melisandre told Arya that she would shut green eyes, blue eyes, brown eyes, when in all reality they didn't have. I think they retconned that Arya was going to kill the Night King. I don't think they had it planned. From what I've read, I don't think they had it planned all along. It was kind of a last-minute decision they made because they wanted it to be unexpected, which is the problem with Game of Thrones sometimes. Is the directors and the producers and the writers, they most of the times they're amazing, but they try sometimes to be unexpected more than truthful to the story. So in the war with the Night King, Arya just literally comes out of nowhere as the Night King's about to kill Bran and stabs him. Alright, now that's cool. Okay, that's cool. How she killed him was cool. I'm not saying it wasn't. But they built up. Throughout 8 seasons, they built up that Jon was going to be the one to take down the Night King. That Jon was going to be the one that really made a difference in this war. And I'm sorry, the whole episode, Jon was pretty much freaking useless. I mean, Jon was exceptionally useless this episode. I would have liked it more. I'm not saying Jon had to be the one to kill the Night King, but you can't even give us a sword fight. You can't give us a fight with Jon versus the Night King, and then the Night King beats the crap out of Jon, and then Arya comes in to save the day. I understand, okay? I understand that Arya killing the Night King out of nowhere is unexpected. But expected is sometimes fine in a story. You don't need everything to be unexpected. I wouldn't have expected Hot Pie to come out of nowhere and feed the Night King to death. That doesn't mean that feeding the Night King to death by Hot Pie is a good ending. Unexpected is not something... And I learned this the hard way. I wrote a book in middle school, and I published it in high school. And I tried to be as unexpected as possible in the book. Spoiler alert, the main character dies at the end. I think I did a good job at being unexpected. But there were times in the story where I wanted more so to be unpredictable than I wanted to be faithful to the story. And I think that's a classic mistake that the Game of Thrones writers are making. So, in this, I'm sorry, so I have to kind of cover how the Night King died, just what I thought of Arya coming out of nowhere and killing him, because there's been debates between the feminists on Twitter and the incels about, oh my god, why did Arya Like, is Arya Mary Sue, or is Arya the symbol of female empowerment? No, it's a fucking show. I'm sorry I cursed, but it's a damn show. Calm down. But what I thought about this last episode, interesting. I honestly thought that I'll get into my predictions after I review the episode, I guess. But I think that it's good that Daenerys is finally going Mad Queen. She's going to get taken out eventually. They've been hinting at it, by the way, since like season 2. Actually, no, they were hinting that she could be the Mad Queen since she had her brother killed by pouring molten gold on his head. All right, Daenerys. I like Daenerys as a character. Okay, I'm not saying I dislike Daenerys, but they have been developing her to be the Mad Queen since her brother Rhaegar died. Like, this isn't even a joke. She was manipulative from the get-go, and I understand being manipulative. Like, I'm not going to judge Daenerys for being manipulative. But she's more manipulative than even most of the characters. So she was manipulative from the get-go, and she's been slowly unraveling for the past, 5 seasons into becoming the Mad Queen. So it's finally arrived that she's going to go full Mad Queen. All right, and you can see that in her facial expressions, especially after Missandei dies. Missandei was... anyone who's listening to this knows who Missandei is. It's good that I finally don't have to explain every little thing. But especially after Missandei dies, you see it in Daenerys' face. That kind of... I thought I possibly saw a little eye twitch. I think they're trying really hard to make... I feel like they're telling the girl who plays Daenerys behind the scenes, just give us your best psycho, paranoid, schizophrenic face. Anyways, I think it's a natural progression of the story, and I hope they don't try to make an unexpected ending again and not make her go Mad Queen, because it's been expected for a while now that she's going to go Mad Queen. And there are some people that are trying to say, oh, Daenerys is going Mad Queen out of nowhere. This is an affront to female empowerment. Yes, there are actually legitimate groups arguing this, not just one singular Twitter user. And to that I say, again, she's been manipulative from day one. She's been unraveling for the past 5 seasons. If you didn't think she was going to go Mad Queen, you were poor judges of character. It took me until season 2, because I binged it. At season 2 is when I thought, okay, this girl's going to go Mad Queen. And it's been blatantly obvious since the Sons of the Harpy episodes. So past that, the episode had a lot of classic politicking that I missed in the old Game of Thrones. I feel that season 8, in terms of... Now, again, cinematography has been beautiful. The Long Night Battle was beautiful. Cinematography. In terms of cinematography. My gosh, I can't talk today. But in terms of storytelling and in terms of character development, the authors have clearly run out of source material. I don't think they've been doing as good of a job. And Season 8, Episode 4, what we just saw last night, was an amazing return to classic Game of Thrones. Amazing return to classic Game of Thrones. A lot of politicking, a lot of behind-the-scenes talking, a lot of manipulations, a lot of double crosses. So I loved it. I was sad that Missandei died. I wasn't as broken up about it as a lot of the fandom was. Listen, Missandei was a good character, but I don't think she was as... I don't think she had that much time to connect. You saw her in the background a lot, and she had some really amazing moments with Grey Worm, who I love. I'm cursing too much. I love Grey Worm. Grey Worm's dope. I love him. But the only reason I love him is because he's badass. Right? He's to me, he's a very singular character. He was a guy who was captured or taken at birth to become an Unsullied, castrated, and now he's this badass fighting machine and there is some depth to his character where he's trying to come to terms with feelings and with love and with things that he wasn't allowed to feel as a pure Unsullied slave. So, yeah, I'm sorry, there is some depth to Grey Worm's character. But one of the reasons I like Grey Worm is I just think he's this badass battle commander who takes no shit. That's the reason why I love him. Missandei, I felt was a very sweet character. She was one of the purest characters on the show. And how she went out was very sad, and how she went out, they did a good job with it. And I think that's going to be the final straw one of the final straws where Daenerys finally goes full Mad Queen, everyone wants her to burn King's Landing to the ground. I don't know what's going to happen on that front. But in terms of my predictions after this episode... Oh, and also one thing that I left out. In the scene where they're celebrating after the battle, there was a blooper a mistake by the productions team where they literally left a coffee cup. They left a modern-looking coffee cup on this old wooden table surrounded by mutton and wine. It was just hilarious. I had to mention that. But as for so again, very good episode. I loved it. I liked how Masande went out. I like that they're putting the one thing I'm like all over the place. This is my first time reviewing an episode, guys. I'm sorry. The one thing that I really liked also was that they're finally using the Scorpions more. The Scorpions, for those of you who don't know the official name, because I didn't know the official name, are those huge crossbows that can kill the dragons pretty easily and decimated Daenerys' fleet when they first arrived at King's Landing. I like that they're using the Scorpions more. Because I understood, like, at the first battle, where they encountered the dragons, that they only had one Scorpion. If you remember when Sir Bronn of the Blackwater started launching this thing at the dragons and trying to kill the dragons. I understood why they only had one. Because they just really discovered this weapon, and they hadn't had time to put it into mass production yet. But I was like, enough time has passed. If they, and my good friend at Lone Conservative, Andrew Amarone, agreed with me, if they don't, they've had enough time. If they don't have 1 million of these freaking Scorpions by now, then this story is just lost. I mean, it would have been ridiculous. But no, each ship in the Iron Fleet was equipped with a Scorpion, all over Cersei's walls, because there's walls protecting King's Landing. All over the walls, there are Scorpions. I liked that. I thought that was a very good idea. I thought that now it makes Cersei a formidable opponent. And I will, before I go into my predictions, give myself a pat on the back for predicting, in some sense, how the story was going to go. Now, I thought during the Battle of Winterfell that Daenerys was going to let Jon die after finding out that he's actually a Targaryen, and in terms of royal rules, has a better claim to the throne than she does. I thought she was going to let him die at some point, but she didn't, which kind of surprised me. But what I predicted would happen was that they'd spend 2 episodes setting up the Night King. They'd spend 1 episode battling the Night King, and the whole reason a lot of people were mad that the Night King was really only used as a plot device instead of the big bad. And I kind of see where those people are coming from, and I honestly partially agree with them. But I predicted that the Night King was going to be used as a plot device to weaken Daenerys' armies. Because at that point, Daenerys had 2 dragons, and the Dothraki and the Unsullied, and she would have had, as reluctant as they are, the North fighting behind her. All right, her army would have been absolutely unstoppable, even against the Golden Company. But I knew they were going to use the Long Night to kill most of Daenerys' armies. I thought maybe they would kill a dragon, but I wasn't sure about that. But to kill most of Daenerys' armies, a big chunk of it, to make it so the battle with her and Cersei was on more even footing. And lo and behold, that's what happened. But now Cersei has like 5,000 Scorpions. And so I think at this point, especially after killing one of Daenerys' other dragons, the dragons are pretty much useless now. Or almost useless. Honestly, I think Cersei has the upper hand at this point. Obviously, Cersei's eventually going to die. Jaime, also, I keep remembering these plots as I want to get on to my prediction. Jaime left for King's Landing. He told Brienne of Tarth that he was going there to serve Cersei again, basically. I don't believe that. I think that Jaime's going there, and I think he's going back with the intention to serve Cersei. But I really do think Jaime's character has intensely developed. What's going to happen is that I think Jaime's going to get there with the full intention of serving Cersei, and eventually he's going to see that even though he loves his sister, he can't serve her. She can't be the one to rule. She's vindictive. She's evil, and he's going to be the one to kill her. I think that's how his arc really has to end for Jaime's character to be fully developed, that he has to kill Cersei, and then somehow he's going to die. But moving past that, what are my full predictions for what's going to happen soon? Varys is going to die. Lord Varys is going to die. There was some heavy foreshadowing that, for one, he doesn't trust Daenerys anymore, which rightfully so. I mean, there were people complaining, saying, like, oh my gosh, Varys is going behind Daenerys' back, which is something she told him not to do. But she asked him, she said, if you ever feel that I'm not serving the realm loyally, come to me and tell me to my face before you do anything. Varys gave her the opportunity. There are some people who aren't acknowledging that Varys gave her the opportunity. Varys went to her face and said, hey, I don't think you're doing such a good job. I think you're going to make a huge mistake that's going to put the realm in danger. She didn't listen. Varys upheld his end of the bargain. He would stay loyal as long as she listened. She didn't listen. Now he's going to turn to Jon Snow. Daenerys is going to find out that Jon told Sansa and Arya after she goes mad, and I think that's going to be the final straw. When she finds out that I think she's first going to find out that Varys betrayed her. She's going to wonder why Varys betrayed her. And then she's going to find out that Jon told Sansa and Arya about him being Aegon Targaryen. And then she's going to find out that somehow Sansa told Tyrion. Tyrion told Varys, I believe. So after that, she's going to go all Mad Queen. I think she's going to try and kill everyone who knows about the secret, which includes Samwell. I've predicted for a long time that Samwell is going to die. I think Daenerys is going to be the one to kill Samwell, because she knows that Samwell was one of the original people to know the secret. Now, originally, I thought it was going to be because Samwell tries to convince Jon to overthrow Daenerys as he did in the crypt in Season 8, Episode 2. But I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is going to happen, now, because they're obviously worlds apart at this point, but what I think is going to happen now is Varys is going to try and convince Jon to overthrow Daenerys. Daenerys will find out somehow. Daenerys will kill Varys. Daenerys will try and kill Arya, Sansa, maybe Bran. I don't know if she'd have the guts to kill Bran, because I think she at least partially understands that he's, like, you can't kill him without sacrificing all of humanity's memory and history. But I think she's going to try, essentially, to kill most of the people who know the secret. I think she's going to succeed with a few. I think she's going to end up taking out definitely Samwell, definitely Varys. I think she's going to try and kill Jon. I don't know exactly. I think also Arya is going to be the one to eventually kill Daenerys, with Melisandre's prophecy that she'd shut brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Daenerys has green eyes. I know they didn't originally plan for her to have green eyes, but obviously they're adapting the story, because originally it wasn't planned for Arya to kill the Ice King, from what I understand. So I think Arya will end up killing Daenerys. I don't think Jon rules the Seven Kingdoms at the end. I don't. There was some heavy foreshadowing in this episode. Like, for one, that Varys dies, because he said, I will serve the realm regardless of the personal cost. And then the second thing that I think is going to happen is that Jon's going to go live in the north. Like the north, with the wildlings. I think those are his people. I think he understands it more. I don't think he's going to rejoin the Night's Watch, and he has absolutely no desire to rule. And I think that, you have to have at least a little bit of a desire to rule. Like, you can maybe not want it overall, but you have to at least be able to see yourself doing it to be able to rule. And I don't think Jon can see himself ruling in the slightest. So I think Jon's eventually going to go live in the north. Daenerys is going to be killed by Arya. And honestly, everyone says this is a really unpopular theory, but I think it's being foreshadowed. Sansa and Tyrion take the Iron Throne. I think that's what happened. Unless Ben Shapiro's right, and Tyrion forms some sort of republic, I think Sansa and Tyrion take the Iron Throne. They get remarried. It was kind of foreshadowed in the Crypt's last episode that they may get remarried. So I think that may happen. I think there's a strong possibility that Tyrion and Sansa end up on the Iron Throne. Especially because, and before you say, oh my god, no way, that's not going to happen. Literally, the writers said one of the reasons they had Arya kill the Night King wasn't even for, like, female empowerment or SJW stuff, or because they thought Arya was awesome. It was because they wanted to be unexpected. What is more unexpected than Tyrion and Sansa ending up on the Iron Throne? I think Tyrion and Sansa rule the Seven Kingdoms. Boom, done. Game of Thrones solved. But we'll have to wait and find out. And until then, that is all the time we have for today's episode. I wanted to do a Cringe Corner segment, but I've run out of time. So for those of you who are listening to me on KLRN, make sure to go and give the show a 5-star review on iTunes and follow us on SoundCloud. Everyone who's listening from iTunes or SoundCloud, follow us on SoundCloud. Like us on SoundCloud. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Do everything you can, because the more 5-star reviews we have, and the more follows we have, and the more subscribers we have on iTunes, the higher up this show appears. So please, check us out, give us a chance, and until then, have a good one.